Hello, everyone. Knock, knock. Who's there? The DM podcast. The DM podcast who? The DM podcast who's gonna tell you about one-shots in about 1 hour. Welcome, everyone, to the show. In the middle of the week when everyone is unsure if they're either looking forward to the weekend or if they're already tired. Joining me today is...
What the
Joining me today, he might be the new king of natural 20s, or he might have unveiled a dark conspiracy to overthrow all DMs. It's Behold Max. And is it even possible to mash 5 sessions into one? He says it is. It's Lucas. Hola, mi amigos.
Hi.
Hi.
That sounded a lot creepier than I thought it would.
Well, at least you didn't mean to. We'll be talking about one-shots today. I think Max has had the most one-shots of us. I do recall our conversation before today. Is that true, Max?
Well, I've heard allegedly both of you don't have much experience with one-shots.
Well, not
allegedly.
Yeah, well, not in the regular sense. I've mostly run entire campaigns, but some of the things I've done could, well, I know how I would run a one shot. Yeah.
Well, it's good that you know how to run it, because pronouncing it can be hard.
Yeah, it can. It's Wednesday. It's getting late for us, but
you're already tired. I hear you're on the tired part.
I'm on the tired part of today. I just a few minutes before the show. I just ate, so
It's the same. Sorry.
That's so late. Yeah.
Well, I was working on other things, but either way. One-shots. So, what would your ideal one-shot look like? Because since you have most of experience, what would you consider the idealist or the supreme example of one-shots? The enlightened ruler of one-shots.
That's a weird way of saying it. A perfect one-shot. I feel like that's hard to do because a one-shot usually is already sort of imperfect in its own way, and you only have one game to do something. But I guess a perfect one-shot would be if you have a group of friends that decently know how D&D works, so you don't have to do any explaining, you don't have to do any extra stuff.
Yeah.
That could take away from the time for the game, and every single person is okay with this game might take 4 hours, it might take 6 hours, it might take even longer. That will be the ideal environment to play in, because it is super hard to be like, it's just going to take 3 hours, guys. It probably won't.
No.
The reality is that there's going to be roleplay, there's going to be all kinds of weird stuff, and if you're stuck in this one little time frame, you are going to be pushing it, and you're going to probably annoy your players, I guess, by being like, you can't roleplay.
Yeah.
Or you just not finish, right?
Or you have to pick it up later. That's one of the things I want to talk about what the big problems with one-shots are.
I've never finished them in time.
That is one huge problem.
And that's when you were saying what's your ideal one-shot? In my case, would just be one that I finish.
Yes.
Fair. Yeah.
The time frame thing is very important.
Yeah, that's the second question exactly. Why do one-shots usually take more than one session? Well, the problem is usually for me is either combat or the roleplay, which players keep hanging on to.
Yeah, the game.
Just the game, entire game.
They're playing the game too much.
Damn it, players. Could you play the game a little less?
You're not progressing quick enough.
I mean, you're not necessarily wrong, but the main reason why a one-shot usually takes too long compared to the time that you have for it is because in my experience, a few times that it's been ran, it's more ran like the first session of a D&D campaign that then also has to end in the same session, rather than a game that's meant to be played in a single game. One main thing about that is something that I want to avoid if I'm ever going to be running one shot is the fact that the players don't know each other yet. That doesn't work too well in my experience. Although it might very well work if you all know what the one shot is about before the game even starts. But if it's all like you don't know each other and you meet in the tavern, that's going to take too long, which is good for a campaign, but not good for one shot.
No, because you just stay in the either you stay in the tavern and just talk the entire game, which is fine, but it would just be the same as just talking on the table, but then in characters.
Mm-hmm.
Or it will just be forced out by the DM, I think. So, what do you think the more problems are with one shot? I also think that either the over preparing for the game is also quite a bit of a problem, that you make too much of the world and you invest a lot of time and effort into creating a big world and a big story, and it's just like, wait, it all had to be in one game.
Yeah, no, I'd avoid doing all of that. And just create a story. Don't worry about the world too much. Like, no one is probably realistically gonna talk or ask about the world's lore.
It depends.
That'd be a weird question for one shot.
Yeah,
and also, if you indeed do a one shot, it's probably best if you inform the players what is the purpose of the game, what you're sort of gonna do, give sort of a backstory for the characters they're gonna play, and maybe they shouldn't even completely create their own character and narratives. I think because a one shot is very much based on the story, a small story that the DM makes. It's not always they can still create their own character, as in the class and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But overall, backstory wise, I'd say maybe not a bad idea to create that yourself.
If they even really need one for one shot.
If they need
they
one,
don't need an actual backstory, but the reason why they're there and what they're going to do. So, you're a group of heisters and you're going to do a heist. There you go. Now you know that.
Yeah. Well, you would still want to have the players make personalities and etc. for the characters, so they can actually play it.
Backstory.
No, that's not backstory. That's true. I combine it usually with backstory, but when I'm creating
in a one
a
shot,
character,
that is not necessary.
No, it is not. So
I know it's hard to let go of lore sometimes, but
it is for me, especially when I'm in the world that we two make. Then I know so much about the world that I know what I have this entire library of ideas which I can use for a game, which is just that's way too much for a one shot. Even if I would trim it down, it's still too much. So what would you do differently while preparing a one shot instead of a normal session?
A lot of things.
Set a very clear end goal and tell your players your goal is to do this. Difference between that also being any small encounters that are just in there for fun, and are not important to your story, skip those. Most of the encounters that I do during a games that's travel. And during travel, I like to come up with just a few encounters that are either roleplay, investigation, or whatever encounters that don't really matter that much for the story. In a one-shot, cut these just for time, and because you're not trying to expand on your world lore, so roleplay encounters or encountering a certain creature they have to fight there because they live in this land, doesn't make sense if that's not the goal of your one-shot.
Mm-hmm. So what should you prepare in the case of world building? Say what would you prepare for world building? How much story would you write? How much of the world would you prepare? Just
one quest.
Yeah, just one quest.
Just enough to make the one quest. Either that, or as you said, like the world that you and Max have, or the world that I'm making. Just put it in that world, and then you already have the lore that you need to write the one shot. If you really want to like add in a bunch of lore to your one shot, but if it's just a random world with just a random group, like it might be the first time you're introducing a few players to D&D, you just run a one shot. It doesn't matter. It's not gonna matter that much unless which sometimes happens. Your one shot turns into a campaign, in which case you're gonna have to start developing some lore afterward.
Yeah, but you would also have a starting point where for which you can just expand from that. So how would you what would you how would you go into the process? Because I just made a world for a campaign, or I was busy. I'm still busy, by the way. I'm still busy working on a world for a campaign, but I feel like I've already created too much, which isn't relevant. So how do you go from the first quest, and this is a question actually way that should be way in the end, but how would you go from the first quest to something bigger, or just how would you just make that one quest?
Just one, like
yeah.
You mean there just is one quest, you're not expanding beyond that?
No, I mean that one quest you were talking about. How would you first make that quest? What would you include in that quest? How long should that be?
Well, we have last episode we've made a dungeon, right?
I can't pull it up since OBS is tripping out on me, but go watch that. It's on our YouTube.
Exactly. We've made a dungeon, and you can actually take a similar approach. As in, you get the setting, you get like all the standard stuff, like where does it play it off? What is like the main enemies? What are like the important location? Who gives the quest? What's the purpose of the quest? And that's really it. You maybe have one village you work out, or a little starter place. Maybe you have a city. I'd recommend not working out that city. Work out a few buildings, and that's it. Just the key points, the key things that every player is going to hear about. There's going to be NPCs that are going to sort of railroading the game. Out of experience, you're going to need that.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, you're just going to be like,
and the players are going to go out of the out of the village.
Yeah, suddenly they're running inside of the city, and you don't want that. So a guide sort of NPC that's going to tell them what the job is, for instance. Or you speak with the players ahead of time, where it's like, this is what your guys are doing, this is the quest that you've been given, and this is what you want to do. But yeah, always have some sort of NPC in the back of your mind that's going to be able to pull them back on the road in case something bad happens. Yeah, you just, for that one quest, I'd say don't build anything too massive. Get a starter location. Get like maybe a mid location where the players do their preparations for whatever they need to do, or get to where they need to go, and then have like a little dungeon crawler.
Yeah.
A little heist or whatever you aim to do at the end. Have them do it, and end it there. Don't make it complicated. Don't put lore everywhere. Just that quest is important. Whatever they're dealing with is important. You can make a little lore for the person or the creature or whatever they're dealing with, but don't go expanding on the city they're in. Don't go expanding on the world they're in, unless like like Lucas said, you have already an existing world. You could do that.
Yeah.
But even if it's like for new players who don't know anything about it, that could even be confusing. So.
Yeah, what I've noticed, and what I don't want to do anymore is getting new players into that world, because that is really confusing, since there is so much to talk about. It's just like they get overwhelmed with all that information, and they're just like, okay, I don't remember any of it, but cool, I guess.
About that also, if you make the world and the lore and all that stuff too grand, you're gonna sort of like waltz over the importance of the little players that are the main centerpiece at the end of the day of the game. You should focus on them more than you should on the world there.
Exactly, and the impact they have on the world. especially in a one shot. So what I was also thinking is you could also just dump them right into the action, like you said, just tell them beforehand, hey, this is what's happening, or maybe just have a guide already. They start at the front of the entrance, just have the guide recall everything they've already spoken about, which they haven't, but just start them there. So okay, you're getting this or this or this, and then go. It's there.
Yeah, I'd say take a page out of game design, where, for instance, in GTA, if you start a heist, right, you get in the preparation room. The guy, like the NPC you've created, explains to them what they're gonna do, what the plan is. This is what we're gonna do, guys. And he's explaining. It's explained. Now don't say you go outside and you walk towards it. No, skip. You're there.
Yeah, that could also
You're
work.
doing it.
Fast travel.
Exactly. Like, don't do everything in between, because, like, in my experience and
in our experience,
our experience, when you let them walk through cities and stuff,
oh no, it takes so long.
You're gonna get a problem. They're
They're
gonna
like,
do
oh
things.
yeah, I want to do all these things because now I can. It's like, no.
I'm gonna steal things.
So DM,
Yeah, that's what I've done.
Yes.
Yeah, I've been guilty of that. No.
So DM,
yeah.
what's around? Yeah, there's there was the last there was the game that was the first game that I streamed on the other channel, was like, they just entered a city with full of air elementals, and it was just like, what do we see in front of us? Yeah, there's an archway, and there's a marketplace just ahead of that. What's on the marketplace? Yeah, there's a few stalls. Never should have said it. Never should have said that. They spent 2 hours.
Stalls, huh?
They spent 2 hours just trying to steal something from a stall and scam the air elemental that was working there. It was just like, oh my, guys, please. Why do you do?
In a campaign, you could do this and still regret everything you did, but it's fine because it's a campaign. You can move on. In a one shot, if this happens, it's gone. It's over.
You just spent your entire time.
You've destroyed your one shot by giving them anything that is not, like, within line of the one shot. So don't do that. Skip everything that is not important.
So what kind of stories would you include into it basically boils down to there should be a dungeon crawl, because not always, but what would you do for that aspect? So what would you do instead of a dungeon crawl, or instead of the regular dungeon? Because a dungeon I've got a few questions about that, but what would you do instead of a dungeon?
Murder mystery?
That would work.
Murder mystery could be a good one. Like a heist could be made as a dungeon crawl, but doesn't necessarily have to be.
Heist could work. Yeah.
Could also be like a puzzle or a more, use your brain kind of thing.
People don't want to do that.
Usually.
It depends.
Usually not.
It depends on the player, I think.
Yeah. Probably. I haven't met them yet.
I like to do puzzles.
Yeah.
I like puzzle games as well, so. But so that would
a
be
healthy mix of both.
Yeah, that would be not only puzzles, because puzzles are just DM challenging the players themselves. Just figure it out, guys.
Oh, sometimes they have to.
Well, sometimes they have to, but sometimes it's also like, really DM. My character wouldn't know this, but I know it. So is it metagaming? It's inherently really metagaming. But we're not talking about puzzles.
The smart character might not be the smartest guy, and the dumb character might be very smart.
There are a lot of inherent problems with puzzles. So, talking about how long you should make the quest. What do you think certain points on the quest should be prepared? Because of course the end, the climax, and how many points?
When you get it, the start, middle, and end, and then an epilogue. I think those six things could eventually give you the best version of a one shot.
Okay.
For example, If you're doing like a dungeon crawl thing, it's like getting the quest, then the first step to either getting to the dungeon or the getting into the dungeon,
Mm-hmm.
then the dungeon itself, ending of the dungeon, and then it's like, oh, okay, you did it, and then you get your prologue, and that's all you need.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So how long? If let's just talk. Keep on dungeons. So how long should we make that dungeon? Because start
5 rooms, no bigger, depending on how much combat you're doing.
Okay.
Probably
Because,
not a lot.
Yeah, combat takes up a lot of time. If you want to have this epic end battle, you should tease it with a little battle before that, depending on how much time you have. With an average of 6 hours per game, in my experience, have no more than 2 combats, because that's going to be all the time you have. You want to spend some time on all the other stuff you want to do.
And
Pretty much.
designing the rest of the dungeon. So if you take into encounter 2 combats, that's already way more than what our dungeon we made last time was. Because to say it quickly, our dungeon basically had 2 possible encounters, one trap, 2 and 2 real encounters, which would make, if they trigger every encounter, they would fight 4 creatures, which would already make it too long for a one shot, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, you probably would want to take away those probable, you would want to have 1 probable encounter and then 1 definite encounters, whereas you give like the middle encounter, you give the opportunity to like sneak past, but be a fight, or otherwise, because if you give too much probable things, if they fill all of them, yeah,
it's gonna take a while.
You're gonna, you're not gonna get to the end.
Like with a one shot, it's worse with a one shot when you're at the end of the evening and everybody's like, oh yeah, come on, I want to go home, let's go. That's worse than if you end 2 hours earlier and just have some time to reminisce about it, because you actually finished it. That's more fulfilling than having a long game and filling up your entire evening of play if you're playing in the evening.
So
we have experience with games that went on a little too long.
Oh yeah, but so how would you then, since it doesn't really happen for us, so what do you think that went wrong in that case? Was it just because we made too much encounters, or 2 players, the players were too...
What game? What are we...
Because we Lucas was saying he have never finished a single one shot. So
correct.
Why would that be then?
Actually, I finished one, but that's because the end had to be hastened very quickly, and while we were all packing up our stuff, that's when we got the epilogue. I think the biggest problem both of us were players fucking around in the time between getting the quest and starting the dungeon crawl.
Yeah.
Starting the actual finishing of the quest. And just too much combat. There was way too much combat for a decent game. That's why it took so long.
Okay.
Yeah, the problem is with all one shots that didn't finish, or either the one that way too long. Was there was just too much content given to the players in the beginning, where that just doesn't work. It just,
they could
that's
screw.
how I found out the hard way too. Like it doesn't work.
Yeah, they just screw around in the town or city too much or whatever.
You'd be surprised how content players can be with one tavern.
Oh yeah.
They can do a lot of things apparently.
Or even a single shopkeep.
Yeah, they can. They truly can. The game I was that I was talking about, they basically never went into. Well, they got to the point that they would get the end goal. No, they would get the thing that they were looking for. But the entire time was just basically just screwing around, just all of the time. I had nothing much prepared, but they just were able to screw around just 3-ish hours just
yeah.
Well, through
it's the improvising part, which as a DM, improvising is a great skill. in a one shot you should improvise to not improvise. Just
That's more difficult. Yeah.
that's
It's
like,
way more
oh,
difficult.
what is over there? And you're like, nothing.
I
There's a
can't
road.
think of things, but there is nothing.
Like, yeah, it's just skipping the traveling stuff. Like, just when they try to like ask things, just say, and you guys walk outside and walk towards your destination, and now you're there.
But I wanted to know.
But DM, shut up.
So yeah.
Railroading isn't bad in a one shot, or well, no, railroading's still bad. Because there's and I had a problem with that. I only recently found that out. Railroading, there's two types of railroading, and I've been messing them up. One is having your players follow a set story that you've made. Another one is forcing the player to do that story in a certain way. Like, you want to get into this mage's tower. It's made out of wood. Oh, we set it on fire. But it's wet wood, so the fire doesn't work. And then starting to counter all their ideas. That's railroading in the bad sense. But if they go to the tower and they start and they find out they go to the tower because that's what you had prepared and that's what they're going to do. That's not railroading. That's just them following this thing that you have prepared. Because if players actively go against what you've made, the game just becomes clusterfuck, and the DM is going to have to pull everything out of his ass, which is eventually going to be less enjoyable for the players as well. Because what the DM has planned is probably better than what he can pull out of his ass.
It
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
So how did you find that out recently? Because
I actually watched a YouTube video that explained that in the exact sense. That's why. But I always thought that railroading is just all bad. But when I give you a plot hook and you start following up on that, is that railroading? No, that's just playing the game.
I'll be honest, I've railroaded a lot of games, even in the campaigns and all that stuff. You just railroad it. You give like two paths, and they go to the same thing, right? I've done that before. I've been that asshole where you give the illusion of choice.
I mean, railroading is only bad if you take away the the player's agency. Thank you. It's only really bad if you take the player's agency away. It depends, by the way. If he's doing something truly horrific, then I mean, go ahead.
That's home rule stuff. And,
so
and
taking away the player's agency is what the worst thing about that is. If you let well, to an extent, because if you have a wooden mage tower, first of all, why would it be wooden? But second of all,
it's an example.
Second of all, if they try to set it on fire, you can go with it, but it would, if it would derail your plot. Yeah, that's a difficult situation. If they really try to, maybe try to.
It is not always bad to when your players do something and you're like, wow, I didn't think of that, and that's very good of them.
Yeah.
Sometimes you should just give it to them.
Yeah.
It's like, if you always do that, if you're like, no, I didn't want you to do it that way, or I want it to be harder, well, sometimes it's fun to just give it to them if they found like a loophole and they were like, you just didn't think of it before. You're like, okay, I'll give it to you, guy.
Yeah.
You win.
Reminds me of when my players used Phantasmal Force to get out of paying for something. It was just like, well, I guess I guess it works. Congratulations, you made it way more difficult than I imagined it, but okay. Talking about, well, basically shepherding players, how different would it be from a normal game in a one shot?
Quite. Like, we already sort of talked about it, like skipping the travel, all that sort of stuff, just making sure they get to their destinations without much of a problem. Because usually in a normal game or campaign, you would explain things. You would tell them to do, you're gonna have a rest, you're gonna do this, and have a watch and all that stuff. It's not important in the one shot. So a lot of like survival aspects, like you have rations, that sort of stuff, just throw it out the window. It doesn't matter.
Or wait, which happens normally as well.
Yeah, just those kind of mechanics don't really matter in a one shot.
Yeah,
that's the difference.
So talking about real world players and how and how long your dungeon should be. How difficult should you make the dungeon or the thing that you're trying them to do?
Well, how difficult? It all depends on the player's level that you want to play on. Like that's like how difficult you want to make the encounter specifically. Like just tailor it to what your player shows, depending on how. Like if you have this longer dungeon crawl prepared and you're like, but we only have 3 players to play or 3 hours to play through it, make your players a little tougher than the encounters. Give the like if you made a dungeon that might take 6 hours and you've made it for level 5 players, make your players level 8 so they can do it in 3 hours.
Yeah,
that's a way you could manipulate your system.
What could also alternatively happen is your players don't know how to play their characters on that level, and it's going to take even longer. But if you know your players and they know their characters and stuff, that could work.
You could also you could also just scale down the encounters if you had a really long dungeon which you wanted to get through, or just remove a couple. You could also try and do that.
You can always improvise remove as well if you're really like, we're already this late. There's this encounter. Just
skip. They leave.
Do one of these. You could do that as well.
Talking about
worst case scenario.
Talking about that and how many encounters you want to do and how difficult you should make it. I feel like I gotta ask the question of how you did last session. How you actually scaled down, because that both basically you created 10 sessions basically, but made it into a 2-shot base. 2-shot.
Yeah. I did like the storyline that I wanted to do. I forced from about 10-ish sessions into 2.
So yeah,
part of that was that I took some encounters out of the travel. Some encounters with which I mean like I think 2. We ended up streaming twice as long, so technically that's the equivalent of 2 games normally.
True. Yeah.
But I took 2 encounters out of the travel. I didn't prepare the town as much that you guys came through, because I didn't, you guys weren't going to be there for a long time.
So what did you prepare from the town? Just a tavern?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the tavern, the name, and how much staying costs. That's it. Nothing else.
And then the dudes that came in and told Tyrus the story about they were already prepared, or you just had them say the same thing.
The people that told him what he needed to know.
Well, did they say the same thing, or did they? Well, you've had to scale down what Tyrus should know before we could go there. So, what did you cut from that, or what did you reveal from Tyrus? What he wouldn't have learned from them, but learned in other ways.
The main thing with that encounter specifically, what they told him what Tyrus otherwise wouldn't have known, is them suggesting like, you should probably go follow up on the bullywugs. We kind of want to know what they are what they're doing. We think it might have something to do with what your story is. He would have instead simply heard like, you gotta figure it out, and then he himself would have to. They would tell him about the bullywugs, and that's the thing that's happening, but not necessarily like you should go there. And they told him their encampment is south of here 2 days. Instead, you guys would have had to go and encounter, the bullywugs that are setting a trap, as you did in the eventual game. But before you get to the town, you would have to look find some of those, and eventually follow them back, or in some other way get there.
Yeah.
Which could have been its whole thing on its own. You could have encountered the lizard folk that were still living in the swamps, who were suffering from the bullywugs, capturing them. And that could have been some roleplay encounters. That would have been some swamp-like combat encounters with some typical swamp creatures. That is just as a random encounter, showing that the swamps are dangerous, something like a crocodile or whatever.
Yeah. Because
kind of the difference.
I figure because a lot of what the boat person said, a lot of that was probably already prepared, but then just skipped over. I figure.
Yeah, a lot of it was prepared, and I just had to either remove it or move it away. Like I put some things that were going to happen later earlier, and some things that I had planned to happen in that longer span of time. That's now going to happen after me having to compress everything.
Yeah.
Also, the dungeon you guys are about to face was a lot longer than I now have to have the time for.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know, to see what you could get rid of to in a real-ish example, to get rid of when your story or your one shot is too long. So yeah, watch out for longer encounters as well, because I think because you already had 2 large encounters there. So Max, tell me something about your previous one shot experience with
I mean, most one shots I did suffered from I sort of started it as a campaign and suffered the consequences. As in, that one shot never became more than, the party fucking around.
Yeah.
But I had one. I think I had one shot that was successful, which is the one with my brother and Ulrich.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
That was also happened to be my first game.
True.
And for some reason, I hit it on the mark on how to start a one shot. I don't know how I did that. I guess because I was so inexperienced, I sort of forgot how to really introduce a party. So I just did it how you should, just throw you in there and explain what you sort of are going to do and what your problem was there. So you immediately went where I sort of told you where you should go. And from there, the game started. You were sent to a prison, and that's where the combat started, the game.
Well, there was a lot of, if I remember correctly, because I, to give some context, I was a gnome traveling to a city, and in that city, as a prison guard was your brother's character.
Yeah.
But I remember there being a whole lot of time before I got to the estate, which would send me into prison, which then began the one shot. How did you make me railroad me into the prison?
I remember telling you that was the important part to talk with. You were I basically sort of gave you the quest of you're there because there's a family member and you wanted money from that guy. So you went there. You wanted the money.
I can remember there being more in front of that, but
it was very quick.
Really?
You just walked straight in there.
Oh,
There was a little beggar there was some beggar or some guy who tried to convert you to a religion. That was the only thing. Like, I annoyed you away from there into that building. He went there. You had a little conversation. Turned out, you know, you sort of, I don't know exactly why, but you lied about something.
I really don't know why.
He knew that you were lying because I set it up that way. Because you needed to go to that prison. Made it dramatic. Sent you to the prison. Then, you know, my brother, the prison guard, he got an order from some voice in his head to get some gear down, and you just happened to be in the middle of all that.
Yeah. So yeah, you can start a one shot or play a one shot out completely with the party split, which isn't usually what I think is the best idea.
Yeah, no, it just worked out. It was, I don't know, it just went well.
Yeah.
He was pretty fast to go in because the moment you were in prison, you guys joined up.
Yeah.
And
well, I didn't really have a choice in the matter.
No, that's the point of probably a one shot is don't give your players too much choice.
Which is weird and saying in the context of D&D, really. The one shots and D&D are a little different. You can play one shot with D&D, but you can't play one shots in the same way that you do playing D&D.
No, you really can't.
The choices are still relevant when the moments where you put them in, but in
Mm-hmm.
the moments where you don't want to put them in, you sort of just avoid choice.
So, how would you make things then relevant for the players if they if they're in, let's say you bring them to the dungeon, what would you do to ensure that they get in instead of they're just like, well, you know, it's time for lunch, let's get back. Just tell your players, nah bro, you're gonna go in, or just...
That's an example of your players being
well,
just dicks.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, that's not ever gonna happen if you have players that know what they're doing. And if you have players who don't know what they're doing, just tell them, we're gonna sort of follow the story. And if you want to get on, like, you just tell them as it is, I guess. It's probably the best way of doing it if they don't know how D&D works.
Yeah, okay. So and when they get into the dungeon, how would you make them ensure that they don't spend too much time? Well, let's say you bring them to, the Tomb of Horrors or something like that, which would probably don't. We'll have an episode about it. The fun place. Well, and they buy everything they need, and they just check every single tile, and they try to get through it as safely as possible. How would you then try to speed them up? That they would...
A boulder falls from the ceiling and starts going towards you.
Move.
Yes.
Guys, we have 2 hours.
Improvise in fun ways if you can. Because you're in a Tomb of Horrors.
Well, that was an example. You wouldn't want to go into the Tomb of Horrors, but
use your environment.
Yeah.
Like if they constantly are checking for traps, and you have forgotten to even prepare traps, after their first check, just say, "You are certain there are no traps. Not here, not in the other hallway, nowhere."
I forgot them. I forgot they existed.
With that specifically, though, you could be like, and for the remainder of this, Jesus, shut your mouth. For the remainder of this dungeon, you don't find any more traps. That's it.
Yeah, you could have it. You could have it that they're... Yeah, I want to check for traps, and you tell how their player checks the first tile and then the second tile, and then they go on 10, 12, 10, 20, 30 feet. Just make their characters... You could do it like their characters move and they check, and they... No traps here. You've bought your 10 feet long stick, but shame. So
just make sure that one check gets them to the first encounter. Oh, you checked, there's no traps. You get to the encounter. Good job, King.
So how would you make that How would you make them feel the atmosphere of the place without being it making too without it be telling them too much information that they don't really need? How would you still make them feel the atmosphere of that place?
Like every othering?
Well,
game,
yeah,
I think
but
just the music. If you die in a game, you die in real life.
Shadow
That's
Realms.
just the standard stuff, you know. Other than that, you know, don't tell what's inside the dungeon. Just tell you're going inside this place with this horrible name.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Don't, you know, maybe you're going for the crystal skull from Indiana Jones. You're searching for that. You don't know what's inside.
You're searching for the crystal. Oh, I sure don't hope that's gonna be a dungeon, because the movie was. I mean, the ending was.
I don't remember it.
You don't, or you do.
Nope.
Oh,
I
truly
genuinely
terrible.
don't.
Truly terrible. So, working with dungeons and traps, how would you then do a murder mystery? How would you make mostly roleplay dungeon or roleplay story work within the time frame of a one shot? Just have someone at the end. I did it. I killed him. Yeah, we're done. Or
Yeah.
how would you approach that?
It's a whole thing on its own. It is one of, if not the most difficult type of game to have to write. I don't think we can possibly explain all that in a single. In that's going to need its own Dungeon Masters podcast.
Steal something that
Yeah,
exists
steal
on the internet.
something.
Okay,
I mean, borrow it.
Steal.
Yeah.
Steal. Yeah, you can
Change the names and you know.
That's what I did with my murder mystery. I took
There
them
you
from
go.
I took them from a Sherlock Holmes game.
There you go. Or just play Cluedo with your players. I don't know.
He did it with the rope in the dining room. Ah, shucks! You got me, boys.
Yeah.
Scooby Doo ending.
Oh, if it weren't for
Just
those
take a
damn.
Scooby-Doo
I would have gotten
episode.
away with it if it wasn't for your damn kids.
Oh,
That's
them.
a great murder mystery, actually.
Just
Scooby Doo episode.
That's actually pretty good. Just rip off Scooby Doo.
Very deep plots usually.
I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? It's a one shot.
Yeah, but there's a guy in an owl suit. He steals children. Figure it out.
Figure it out. So getting away from that, just let me mentally get back to the subject.
Oh man.
Oh man. Well, murder mystery. Okay. Well, we can do another episode. But then, how would you do a more roleplay heavy one shot? Except just no murder mystery, but then, well, let's say, I don't know, more roleplay heavy one shot. How would you
Doing
design
your
that?
taxes.
Wait, do your taxes?
Well,
The one shot.
if people want to do my taxes, well,
Well,
no, but
you just don't tell them. But that's what they're doing.
no, but how would you design such a thing that it wouldn't take too long?
Context is usually important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Roleplay is just that really depends. Like, an old roleplay session.
Well, just predominantly roleplay.
Yeah, would be. I don't know. Most one shots have some kind of combat. Roleplay, you can really like. You can end a conversation if you need to. Really.
I mean,
So roleplay shouldn't really be a problem to make it not too long. I think. I don't know. I've never run a one shot. Why are you asking me?
well, I was wondering what your...
You want to know what you would do in a mostly roleplay one-shot?
Well,
I wouldn't.
Fair enough.
Because the problem with that is, even in a murder mystery, you would have roleplay, but that's because, you know, you're talking probably with the other players about, you know, who did it, what did we do, what are the clues, and you're sort of talking not as your player, but you're probably metagaming and stuff with the other people. If you're gonna do like a roleplay heavy thing, it's so weird because it's a one shot, and roleplay is usually really bad in characters you don't really know or get used to. Like, sure, some people are really good at it, but it's even then, you know, you don't really get attached to your character.
Yeah.
So you'll notice a lot of joke characters with like a stick, which is funny for one game, but really gets old if you were to do it in a campaign. Sort of characters, and then have them in a role. Like, I just feel like there's not enough time or development to really have a super roleplay focus because nobody probably cares enough about.
Yeah. Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. I'm just wondering, what the different versions of the one shot would be and would look like. Well, how is this?
I guess with roleplay is what's important. At the end of the day, the roleplay needs to have a purpose. It doesn't need to be about the characters.
No,
so
no.
I'm in the tavern, yada yada. You know,
if
it
you're
has to have a purpose.
It also depends if you're or what your players are into. If they're really into high intrigue games, considering courts and stuff, you could make them go into the court of a king, and they be courtiers for a one shot. I don't know. They try to stop a war from happening or start a war.
You could make that an encounter where you have to like talk to someone and convince them. You could make that like have maybe the entire game lead up to them finding reasons as to why they should sort of like lean someone's opinion, and then the end encounter is them trying to convince them, you know,
that their
DC being lower depending on what they have found and what they can get. You know, you can do something like that. That could be pretty roleplay heavy. You'd probably still have common encounters. Yeah.
It's focus, a roleplay focus, not roleplay only, because that again, would not really.
That would be like, it has purpose.
Yeah,
purpose is important,
and it has to be fun. You could combine more things as well. You could do. If you were talking about a court and you had to convince people, if I can remember, Dragon Age Inquisition had near the end of the game had a court scene in which you had to go into an illegal part of the castle where you could find information to persuade people to follow one side or another, or to clear up your name. And there was also a fight scene in the middle where one got you to duel one another because, I don't know, honor. Courtiers are really weird people. Sorry to any courtiers out there. So
yeah, you could do that.
And that might be a fun. That might be fun encounter to do. So how would you then, since the players went through everything, you fought off the end baddie, they got through it. How would you reward them? What is the epilogue?
Nothing. Like, don't reward them with like, oh, and now you get a magical item. Like,
yeah, no.
That's great. The end of the game. No, epilogue it. If a character died, describe their funeral. If they were supposed to get something for it, describe how they got to it and how they got all the glory and stuff. Just make it a nice ending. Or if you really want to fuck over playing, say like, oh, and on the way out of the dungeon, you all fell downstairs and died. It could have been funny as well. I feel like if they made a bunch of shitty characters who've been joking all night.
Yes, a
the epilogue
meteor.
doesn't really matter as long as all of you can walk away from a game like that just fulfilled and happy. Then it's fine.
So
yeah,
I think that's the most important part. Just think of the purpose that your characters need to do, or what your characters need to do, and what they should find. Railroad them enough that they should, then get there without any screwing around beforehand or screwing around in towns and cities, because you can do a whole lot in that. And well, make sure that the players and you have a satisfied feeling at the end of the night, the end of the day. I think that's
Pretty much.
pretty good.
That pretty much sums it up, yeah.
Yeah.
That's one shots.
I am interested in getting the next episode to be a murder mystery one shot, to create a murder mystery one shot. So, how about we do that?
Yeah,
I
we
say
can do
the
that.
entire time Google,
Steal.
because I don't know anything about murder mystery.
Ah, yes.
We can figure it out next week.
We can figure that out next week. Either way, it seems
Sure.
it seems like we've run out of time of content for today. We went a bit shorter than normal, but that's fine. Thank you so much for being here and for you guys for being with me. Follow our socials; they're on the screen on the left or on the right. And check out my music. It's on Spotify. That's the name down there. Check out on YouTube. Subscribe. Like us, or if you liked it, or dislike if you didn't. Click that little bell button.
Don't dislike, please.
Don't dislike.
Dislike me then,
You-
but
Why
then
are
like
you
the
urging
video.
people to dislike? What the hell is this?
Well, I gotta be honest, right?
What is this reverse psychology?
Yeah.
Also, follow us on Twitch. We're live every Monday and Friday with the Unravel D&D game. It's from 1:30 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. if I'm correct.
Or report us.
well, yeah, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
It's on the right, and the DM podcast every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. EST. Thank you so much for watching again. Take care. Have a nice day, and remember, keep having fun.
Good night, day, whatever.